Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Sunny Hostin just experienced a major on-air moment, and Mercury retrograde had nothing to do with it. Greg Gutfeld called her out so sharply, even the teleprompter seemed to stall. The tension was palpable, reactions were instant, and the internet is in full meltdown mode. If you've ever witnessed a live TV moment unravel, this one takes the crown. It was the clash no one saw coming, but somehow everyone anticipated. And just wait until you hear what she said once the cameras stopped rolling.
I The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly, it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Sunny Hostin finally hit a breaking point, and not the kind The View usually brushes off when things get mildly awkward. No, this was a full high-definition, 4K level on-air moment that had everyone watching. The spark, Greg Gutfeld, who managed to call out more contradictions in 2 minutes than the show has sidestepped in 20 years.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since like COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue I think for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big bounty towels you don't want to carry? Those from Costco. Somebody else those.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm but at least I tip.
Sunny Hostin finally hit a breaking point, and this wasn't the kind of mild awkwardness The View usually shrugs off. This was a full-blown, high-definition, 4K level on-air moment that had viewers glued to the screen. Greg Gutfeld managed to call out more contradictions in 2 minutes than the show has sidestepped in 2 decades.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she...
It started like any typical Tuesday on The View. Lively chatter, emphatic nods, and the usual air of certainty that every hot take was reshaping the world. Sunny Hostin, in her familiar role as the show's legal authority, took center stage with her signature boldness and passion, delivering insights with the confidence of someone who believes blame is always external and say it with enough conviction, and it becomes fact.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
If you've never tuned into The View, imagine the comment section of a heated political Facebook thread. Only it's hosted by people who skimmed a Wikipedia page on the Constitution and walked away feeling like scholars. Sunny Hostin fits right in, often positioned as the voice of reason, assuming your idea of reason involves labeling every opposing view as a threat to democracy, all while sipping an aggressively strong latte.
Milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay.
But then came the plot twist. Greg. Gutfeld entered the chat, and that's when things got really interesting. Gutfeld isn't your typical TV commentator. He's more like that guest at a dinner party who says out loud what everyone else is only thinking. And apparently, Sunny didn't get the memo that sarcasm is still legal tender in televised debate. The moment Gutfeld started listing her greatest hits of contradictions, Sunny's composure wobbled like a beach chair in a windstorm. Take her signature stance, a passionate call for calm, respectful dialogue, just weeks after labeling large swaths of the country as dangerous, simply for disagreeing with her worldview. According to her logic, you're reasonable if you agree with her entirely. If not, you're suddenly a national concern. It was a mashup of courtroom drama and cafeteria-style politics, but Greg wasn't finished. He came armed with receipts. 1 minute, Sunny was vehemently opposing a border policy. Fast forward to a nearly identical policy under an administration she supports, and suddenly it's nuanced and too complex for the average person to understand. If contradictions were decor, she could furnish an entire house.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect this patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it...
Greg laid it all out. Sunny's outrage operates like a light switch, immediately flipped on when a conservative so much as clears their throat, and mysteriously, off when a liberal takes a nosedive into constitutional contradictions. She's quick to demand full-scale investigations over a poorly worded tweet, yet often defends public figures who'd need a head start just to spell ethics. And the audience? Unshakably loyal. Gutfeld could have handed them a leather-bound scrapbook of Sunny's contradictions, autographed by Sunny herself, and they'd still boo him for being too harsh. So Sunny did what seasoned media figures often do when cornered. She flipped the script. In record time, she shifted into victim mode, voice trembling and eyes glistening with what looked suspiciously like media-trained tears. Suddenly, Gutfeld's fact check became an attack, not just on her, but on women, minorities, and possibly even rescue animals. Because when the facts aren't in your favor, the next best strategy is to make it emotional.
Joy Behar gets racism, after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Bran Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical
Annie, who spent years lobbing harsh labels at millions from the safety of her ABC perch, suddenly got misty-eyed the moment someone dared to point out that she's contradicted herself more often than a motivational speaker, with a fear of commitment. It was an emotional performance that could take Olympic gold if the judges scored on sheer lack of self-awareness. And The View? They circled the wagons like it was an old Western, except instead of fending off outlaws, they were shielding Sunny from the existential threat of being fact-checked. Whoopi Goldberg even jumped in with a morale boost that essentially boiled down to, if you believe it hard enough, it's basically true.